My name is Joe Adebato. I'm the Director of Counseling here at Burlington High School. This is grade 9 and 10 academic planning night, and I appreciate you coming. As you can see, we're trying to make sure BCAT is up and running for tonight's event. I know there's a lot more parents and students out there than that's represented here tonight, so that's why we like to film all our events so parents can choose to watch this. So the counseling department offers a variety of planning nights throughout the course of the school year. This is obviously for grade 9 and 10 parents. We also, last week we actually held our junior college planning night, and then we do a senior planning night in the fall. We also have a couple of financial aid nights. And so, again, we really like to televise our events so those that can't make it are able to watch. Tonight's format, each counselor is going to talk a little bit about something in regard to academic or college planning. We find these nights to be helpful. We have changed it and modified it over the years. We are always trying to keep up to date with whether it be college information, some of the resources that we use. We update them periodically every couple of years. So we're going to be covering all that information tonight. You do have handouts that were in the back. I would encourage you to take notes. You can ask questions as each counselor wraps up their individual session. So I'm just going to jump right in. These are our school counselors. This is obviously all on the website as well, but just so parents are aware, every student at Burlington High School is assigned a school counselor, and that counselor stays with the student all 4 years. We like that model. We find it helpful working with students and families. We also have 2 school adjustment counselors. School adjustment counselors work with students for short-term periods. So all students have a school counselor. They may meet with our school adjustment counselor. They do some social and emotional counseling. They do some other group work with students, and so some students will work with them as well to supplement their experience at the high school. We also have 2 outstanding administrative assistants. Our secretarial support at the high school is amazing. We are very fortunate to have 2 very competent secretaries that help with a variety of things. As you kind of navigate through your experience when you get to junior and senior year, you'll be talking most likely to Teresa. She handles all of our transcripts, but we also have Marisol Goncalves, who is usually kind of right there when you come in the office. So they've been great, and they really help support the high school counseling staff. Again, we're going to get into academic planning. We're going to talk a little bit about SCORE, our college management program. We're going to talk about career exploration. We'll get into college basics. We'll touch a little bit upon stress and anxiety. We hopefully don't want to create any of that tonight. We just want to talk about how the high school counseling staff goes about supporting that, and then we'll have Q&A. Next slide. So this is just more of a kind of an overarching thing. The high school counselors, every year we review this, and this would be kind of equivalent to what a curriculum in the classroom that a teacher may follow. We kind of strive to do these overarching things at each grade level. So it really helps us developmentally to make sure we are working with students at the appropriate level as to what they should be working towards each year at the high school. So we'd like parents to see that. That's just kind of an overarching view, but we really have it very detailed on our counseling webpage. It's called a developmental model, so we do follow that. And now I'm going to hand it over to the next counselor, Mrs. Smith.
Thank you. Hello, I'm Mrs. Smith, and thank you for coming tonight. So, 9th and 10th grade. They are now in a whole new world of exploration. So now that they're in high school, we really try to encourage your child to say, we don't want you to wait till senior year to make your plan for after high school. Let's go back further. We have the developmental model for a reason. So 9th and 10th grade, now's your time to say your grades count. Start thinking ahead. That means start to think about what you want to do after high school. What does that look like? What are your strengths? What are your weaknesses? Think about, are you college bound? When we talk about strengths and weaknesses, this is a key thing that I think some families and some students may come in thinking that they love math and science and they want to go and be a doctor, but their grades are horrible in math and science. So I think it's good to be realistic, but also think about career clusters. Think about maybe you like math and science, but knowing how much schooling you have ahead for being a doctor, start investigating what do you like about being in the medical field. What other things are there that don't maybe require as much education? These are all the things to just kind of start chewing on. Most high school students tell us that they don't know much about careers and their life is very limited. And I say, well, of course you don't know what you want to do when you get out of high school. You're in 9th grade or 10th grade, but what are you thinking about? So when we meet with the students one-on-one, that's one thing we will ask them when we're planning course selection. What careers are you thinking about? And we want them to be forward thinking. So when we talk about stress later, forward thinking is always one of the best practices in terms of dealing with that kind of thing. So college bound. Not all careers require a 4-year degree. Investigate these things. Look at your finances. There are some careers that need a technical degree. There are some that are 2-year, or you could do a 2-year plus a 2 plus 2 to be a 4-year. So you have lots of options. Thinking about the college major, oh great, if I want to go into nursing, that means nursing. But if I want to go into certain other things, what does that mean I study? If I want to be a vet, what does that career cluster look like? What are the options? What do you actually study? What are your career interests? And again, what do you not want to do? Because honestly, sometimes that's just as valuable. What do you know you not want to do? And tease that out. Sometimes I have students who I'll say, oh yes, you love you think you want to play soccer professionally, but what if you're not really all that good? What are your other options? What else do you like? But maybe you love being in the soccer arena. What are the different other fields? You could manage the turf. You could do the business side. So be thinking more broadly and be creative and start thinking about these things. So, in terms of academic planning, what do you need to be doing? You need to be not just planning next year, but looking at all the courses that are available, planning for high school. Prerequisites, you need this before you can take that. And align those course plans for whatever your career and college interests are. And the requirements, and then review that plan. It shouldn't stay the same. It doesn't typically stay the same coming into high school as it does as you move along and start to tease out what you like, what courses you didn't expect to like as much as you did. And you should be broad and follow your passions. It shouldn't be such a rigid thing. The most competitive colleges, Dartmouth, I was on a webinar and they were talking about how I don't need you, I already know you're very bright. You don't need one more advanced class. Maybe what you need to do is explore that passion. We want people who are English majors or business majors who also love theater, because we also have a theater and we want a rich campus life. So follow your passions, follow the things that are interesting as well. Course selection timelines. So teachers have spoken to the students, given the recommendations. Those are in Aspen right now. On this past Monday, Mr. Adebato had an assembly as a reminder to how to input classes into Aspen. And we are currently in the throes of meeting with students one-on-one. So yes, our days are swamped for this week and next week. The following week, on Monday the 17th, the student portal closes in Aspen, and then the following Friday after that, in homeroom, students will get verification sheets to confirm that they signed up for what they thought they were signing up for. And they should check that, because we tell students, you can change your schedule anytime up until the day school starts. Once school starts, you're locked in. You're in what you're in. So check to make sure you have what you're in, the levels are right. If there's debates about CP, should I be in a college prep or an honors, you have some time, because our our access to Aspen doesn't close until the end of the month. What do you need for graduation? Each class is worth 5 credits, so every year English, 4 years math, 3 years of science. So yes, typically most seniors aren't taking, if they are not going into a science field, they don't need to take a science. Same thing in history. World language, 2 years of the same language in sequence. 10 credits of exploratory just to broaden your horizons. They'll take gym and or health every year. And additional electives, total is 110 credits. But to be honest, most students graduate with way more than 110 credits. Mr. Adebato, did you want to talk about the new MCAS? I know with the MCAS now no longer being an official graduation requirement, we've been murky on what's happening, so.
Thank you. So the MCAS is still a requirement in terms of taking the test. So as of right now, students will still be required to take the MCAS test. The part that's changed is the score. So if a student does not pass the MCAS, that student can still graduate, but they still have to meet the Burlington High School requirements. And we're finalizing the language for this. It's being done with Principal Sullivan, Dr. Conti, Dr. Chen. And so what's going to happen is there's going to be some more formal language, which we put into our program of studies. But taking the MCAS will still be required. Parents will still be able to get information in terms of how students scored and areas of strength, of weakness, so on and so forth. So I did want to let you know that is something that's still being finalized, but grade 9, the way it plays out is students in grade 9 will take the MCAS science test in June, and then when students are in grade 10, they'll take the English MCAS in late March and the math MCAS in late May. So that's how the MCAS testing plays out.
Thank you. Okay, so in addition to the college prep and the honors, here are 2 other options. If you would like college credit in high school, there are AP and dual enrollment. Dual enrollment means you are in any of these classes here: Latin 5, Anatomy and Physiology honors, honors global business, global accounting. You're in these classes. You don't do anything else other than fill out the registration form. The parents will get a bill, and I think it's close to $400 to get the college credit, but your child will have college credit that they can take that transcript and take it to whatever college they attend. The benefit of that is, that means if you're in college, you typically take maybe 5 classes each semester. That means if you have college credit coming in, you take 4. So it kind of lightens your load. It gives you a little bit of a cushion. So there's all these options. Your 10th graders have only been able to take 1 up to this point. Now there's many, many others available to them. We also have virtual courses available for 11th and 12th graders that they can take online with courses that are not available in Burlington. But I will say, you must be focused, you must be very organized, because you don't have a teacher in front of you reminding you what you need to do. So it is definitely for an independent learner, but there are a lot of really interesting options. Yep, so for example, some of our students have taken forensic science before we started offering it here. They've taken Irish literature, they've taken cybersecurity, they've taken American Sign Language, Portuguese, like a lot of really super interesting things. I've had students take, previously we had another partnership and they've taken different art classes like interior design, different things which are super fascinating. So it's super interesting to really take a deep dive into something that they might be interested that's not offered here. Okay, Mr. Adebato just talked about this. FYI, if you move down further, the Koplik and the Adams, if you do well, that can be worth college scholarship money, like close to $2,000 per year at UMass Amherst or the state school, so good to know. Okay, SCORE. What is SCORE? SCORE is our platform. It's our website that we use to walk through a lot of different avenues, like college research. You can do a search for, and even now I would recommend, this is one thing that you could be doing now, is getting to know, does your child, what do college, most of them don't know what a college looks like. Big schools, small schools, they don't have a sense for what they like, so it would be a very wise use of your time for sophomores especially, but even freshmen, to start getting on a campus, seeing what they like, seeing what the vibe is, and getting a sense for that. Junior and senior year, we use SCORE as a platform for students to sign up for college visits by admissions reps. The benefit of that is the people who come as admissions reps are often the same people who read our applications. So getting that personal connection is a really big deal, because then if there's something iffy, it's a relationship. Oh, I know that person. They took the initiative to come say hello, all of that. And again, many of your students don't know what they don't know. So they're the people who you can say, what are dorms like? How does the food work? Like all that kind of stuff. We also use the SCORE platform to manage applications and letters of recommendation. We send all of our stuff through SCORE, so they'll be using this quite a bit through senior year. And also the career interest assessment is a really big deal. I know it's on the next slide also, but the career interest assessment is, when we talk about those career clusters, there's different assessments that you can do on your interests and on your careers that can help you get access to maybe some of the national platforms that you can learn more about what it's like to be an architect. What kind of licensure do you have? What accreditation do you need? What classes are recommended? What schools have those? So, yeah, you can go ahead. So this is the app, or this is the website, and students just log in with their own email address, with their school email address, and parents can also have an account. So I think in the back there are some sheets if you want to sign up to have access to your child's account. So I can put colleges that I think your child should look into on SCORE. They can put on, you can put on, and manipulate and look up different things. So it's really kind of handy because it talks about, like, there's part of the platform is like not Google Classroom. It's like Google Maps, and you can see and zoom in on where a college is. Is it close to a city? Where is it? So there's a lot of very interesting things that you can get from that. Again, the career exploration, and they'll ask questions about all sorts of different questions. The assessments are pretty quick, and kind of tease out some of the basic ideas to give you a good general overview of maybe some careers that might be recommended for your interests. And and there's quite a bit of information on salaries, careers, recommended courses, things like that. What we're starting this year is youth science. And we're kind of excited about this because they're a series of brain games. So they're 5 to 10 minute brain games. They take maybe about 80 minutes total to do the whole thing, and you can stop and you don't have to do it all at once. But it's very interesting. There'll be things like, here's a piece of folded up paper with a hole in it. If I opened up this square, which one would it look like? Some people are great at that. Other people, not so much, but then there'll be other things that they're better at. So this is another way of looking at the different aptitudes to see what kind of careers match what your child might be interested, or even point them towards careers maybe they hadn't considered much before. And you can also access this and access the results. We're going to be working a lot with sophomores over the course of the spring, but freshmen do have access to youth science as well if they would like to start that. Does anyone have any questions up to this point? Is everyone good? Yes.
I'm sorry, do the kids already know about SCORE? Do they already have an account, or do you have to sign up first?
Sure. So the question was, do students already know that they have a SCORE account?
So we did inform all the students. We sent out a parent square notification to all students in grade 9 and 10. And where Burlington has a contract with UScience, students can just use their Gmail account to log in. So it's accessible now to students. We just really started our agreement with them, probably about a month and a half, 2 months ago. So we're putting it out there to all students so they have the opportunity to start the brain games. But the counseling department is going to be meeting formally with sophomores throughout the spring to complete the assessment and discuss the results. But parents, we would love it too if you could encourage at home for your children to maybe take the assessment as well, and you can kind of check it out too. But the report functionality is pretty interesting. The information it provides is very interesting as well. You get a lot of career information, and it's very positive, meaning no matter how a student does with these aptitude assessments, all the results and the reporting back is very positive from our experience. So, but I guess I made that longer than it needed to be. At the end of the day, if you get your Google School Gmail account, you're good to go.
But regarding score in particular, at the end of sophomore year, or at the end of freshman year, our plans are also, we will be meeting with our 9th graders too and making sure that they're on. And then sophomores, when we do the youth science, we'll also be making sure that they're on score at the same time, in case for some reason it got missed. That's for just you, yes, yeah. But yes, the students already have an account for score that they can log into with their school email address. Yeah.
Science parents don't have accounts. Science, you'd have to go in with your child's account.
Right. So just for the recording purposes, parents can access, but you have to log in with your child's login account. Yes, it was another question? Yes, no, and that's a good question. The vast majority of colleges take all of this. It's the super, super competitive colleges, like the Harvards and the BUs, the BCs, like the Tufts, like the really competitive ones that are going to have their own little nuances about what they take. And sometimes, right, but there'll be little but either way, even if they don't take the credit, the point's not even about taking the credit even necessarily. It's about you also want to show that you're that's what shows that you're able to handle that college level work. You're demonstrating, regardless of getting the credit or not, you're demonstrating that you are challenging yourself at the highest level possible. And this is what we hear when we meet with the admissions reps from like Holy Cross and Dartmouth and different ones.
I just wanted to add, so every Mass public college and university accepts the credit. And for private schools, there is an element of a research aspect. So as a parent, I think it's worth your while, just if there's a certain block of colleges students are interested in, you may want to look into whether or not they accept it. Me personally, I think it's worth a gamble because you're paying a reduced rate for the tuition. So it's just something you have to think about when you go through the process. We're going to jump to the next counselor at this time. Again, we're going to answer all the questions, but we're going to try to space it out a little bit, and then we'll certainly stay at the end for any questions as well.
Oh, that's all right. Hi, everyone. Thanks for coming. My name is Mrs. Murphy, and I'm going to talk a little bit about enrichment opportunities, extracurriculars. So some of the enrichment opportunities that we have are obviously volunteer hours. So we have those on our website, and obviously your student can see their counselor, and we can help them navigate that. We have a job board outside in the main counseling area with any kind of jobs that come our way, so we be sure to post that. And then any other jobs that come in, Ms. Goncalves will let us know about it, and then if, we can tell your students about it too. So we try to keep that updated as much as possible. We just had a career fair a few weeks ago, I think it was for upperclassmen, right? Juniors and seniors, yeah. So, and then Job Shadow Day, I would imagine that's also probably for the upperclassmen coming that way. So that's more for the upperclassmen, but it's just an FYI. And then we have summer programs that are also, we're getting emails and information regarding summer programs. I know a lot of students will ask us for a transcript or a letter of recommendation, or to fill out some forms for, I had a student for Bank of America internship, someone else for an engineering internship. So we're starting to sort of field those requests. So any kind of summer programs, we're happy to help your student navigate that as well. And I'm just going to touch base a little bit about the college piece. I know Ms. Minty is going to talk a little bit more about that. I don't want to go too in depth just because your students in 9th and 10th, and this is more of an overview, but we did want to talk about it a little bit. Obviously, visiting college campuses, I tell my students this is going to be where you're going to be living for the next 4 years. You want to like it, and they may have state sport games at different university stadiums, concert shows, or even if you're just driving by. Obviously, we live in an area with a plethora of colleges and universities, so just swinging through the campus just to see what it's like, getting a lay of the land to see if you may want to go back and visit and do a formal visit. That's helpful too. And then SCORE also has, I've been going through with my juniors looking at the different aspects of SCORE. You can do a general overview and research about academics, student life and activities. So SCORE has those components as well. The College Board, obviously this is the website for PSATs, SATs. They have what's called Big Future, so that's going to tell you, it's going to be another sort of research piece for the college aspect. And then actstudent.org, obviously the ACT is another standardized test for college. They're going to have some information as well. So I usually tell my students, make sure you look at all the websites, most importantly the websites of the specific colleges that you're looking to apply to. And then virtual tours, of course, those have been, they were around back in the day, but since COVID, there have been more virtual tours. They've really fine-tuned those. And then college fairs, there are a few coming up, actually. I think there's one next week, right, Mr. Adebato, at Reading High School? Oh, perfect. Okay, so we'll talk about that in a little bit. And then information sessions at colleges as well. This is super helpful, general information. And then social media. A lot of schools may have official TikToks or YouTube, so we just want to make sure that students are getting their information from a reputable source. So if it's the official TikTok or YouTube or Twitter or Instagram of the institution, then you can consider them to have the appropriate credentials. And then factors in the admissions process, again, we get into the specifics with our upperclassmen when we work on this process. The transcript, obviously that's the most important piece. We actually just had a freshman health lesson where we went through the different aspects of the transcript to get them to start to sort of see that and what that means in terms of college application. The college application piece, and then extracurriculars, of course. That can be anything students do in or outside of Burlington High School. If they're part of a youth group or a church group outside of school, if they play a sport or they're part of a club here, that's also part of it. Colleges will come and say to us in the visits that they take a holistic view. Obviously, the transcript is, indicative of what you've been doing over the last, 3 to 4 years here in terms of your classes, but there's much more to the application. Letters of recommendation, we were sort of talking about that with our juniors now. We typically recommend that they get a letter from a grade 11 or 12 teacher. I usually say maybe you had this person twice, maybe this person is your robotics advisor and also teaches you math, so they can talk about how you are in the classroom and then also how you are in your club or activity. Then demonstrated interest, colleges sort of, they sort of have a little, check mark system if you like a tweet or an Instagram, or a student has an alumni interview, or if they visit the campus, they go to a campus tour. So they're sort of taking stock of how much interest you have in their institution. So that's also a part of the application when the colleges review the actual application. And then standardized tests, of course. A lot of schools are going test optional now, but there are still some schools that require the SATs, but we go through that with our students as well. And then this is the top of the transcript. This is what colleges see up in the right-hand side there. That's weighted GPA. We talked about this with our freshmen recently, and so we're talking about it with our juniors as well. So this is the top of what we send. Obviously, it's the high school personal information of the student, and again, the GPA and how many credits. And then the middle, obviously, this is the meat of it, right? So colleges are going to see each course name, the level, and just the final grade. So, if a student says, oh, that quarter I sort of struggled a little bit, I got a, B minus, I usually say, don't sweat it. They're going to see your final grade, which is all the quarters put together, and the mid-year and the final. And then it's going to show you how many credits on the right side, and yeah, so level, grade, and credits. So this is exactly the middle of the transcript, the meat of it, what they're going to see. And then the bottom is just the grading system. Each school has this at the bottom of their transcript or somewhere in the transcript, the grade key, course levels, and then our method of computing the GPA. So going forward, something to note, the GPA calculation, so in years prior, the dual enrollment classes that Mr. Adebato and Ms. Smith just mentioned previously only had honors weight, but going forward for your students, so 9th and 10th, they're going to have the AP weight. So that's what's going to be happening for the class of 2027 and beyond. So a school profile, every school has one. Lexington has one, Bedford. It's basically just talking about what the community is, how many people in the community. It talks about our contact info, graduation requirements, curriculum, plans for graduating seniors. Sometimes schools will put recent schools that students were accepted, test score information, so the mean SAT scores of this particular school, and then the AP range. So every school does that. Specific class information, the highest, lowest, and the mean GPA, and then GPA calculation formula, range, and weight. So that's going to be, that goes with every single student's application package. And again, that's specific to the seniors right now. But extracurricular activities, create an activity list, so it's like a resume. So we're going to be doing that soon with our juniors. And there's, you can never start too early. So I usually tell my students, sometimes, they'll forget if, oh, I did this, Light the Night Purple. Make sure you write everything down. I say, you start a Google document and just keep track of everything you're doing. I know Adopt a Class is different. So Ms. Kavanaugh sort of keeps track of that, and that's, I think it's 2 hours a year, Mr. Adebato, and if you miss a year, it's 16, am I right? Yeah, you have to catch up. So we usually encourage kids, just do those 2 hours every year, and sort of keep track of that. So the extracurricular activities are going to be, highlight your accomplishments, your commitment, if you have any leadership, if you're a captain of a sports team, or if you have, if you're a student council president, that type of thing. And I tell kids, you want to keep it from 9 through 12, unless you've been dancing since you were 3, or you've played the piano since 2nd grade, and until you're a senior. But definitely want to keep it from 9 through 12. And again, it's anything that you've done here, and also outside of Burlington High School. So, any questions? And Ms. Minty's going to talk a little bit more about SATs and standardized tests and college stuff. All right, Ms. Minty, thank you.
Thank you very much. All right, so as Mrs. Murphy said, the SATs and ACTs is a much smaller part of the college application process right now. Actually, even before COVID, there were many, many colleges that had been leaning and choosing to go test optional prior to that, but then during COVID, every college had to be test optional. And since that time, even though it's been 5 years now, it was just last year that a few of the Ivy League schools decided to start requiring test scores again, but not all of them. And then the other main schools that do require test scores right now are the public schools in Georgia and Florida. But for the most part, 95% plus still do not require them, and the majority of our students have not sent test scores as part of their applications over the past several years. However, we don't know what's going to happen a couple years from now. If a trend, there may be more schools who may begin to require them again. I still don't think it's going to be nearly as many as before. The reason I think, just what we heard from these elite colleges who had always assumed the scores were super important, they actually found that during the years when they weren't able to get test scores, the students who applied were not any worse. And in fact, sometimes they got not just sometimes, but I think they said they got a better applicant pool because it was a more diverse pool, and it wasn't people just who were good test takers, but people who were more interesting, like Mrs. Smith had mentioned, being highly involved in things outside of their classes, as well as being just good students. So I do think it's still going to remain a small part of the process. However, we still encourage you to take a test before you graduate, just in case you need it for any of the places you apply. So the first test that your students will take is during sophomore year. So for sophomore parents here, they already took the practice SAT this fall. Burlington High School just automatically signs up all sophomores for the PSAT, which stands for practice SAT. So those scores are only just for you and for us. They are not shared with colleges or with anyone else. It's just to give the students an experience with a shortened version of what the real SAT exam is like. And statistics do show that when students take practice tests, they get higher scores on the real test. So they automatically take it in sophomore year. Then I guess I should just mention as well that note about Kaplan test prep, that would be for junior year. If closer to the middle of junior year, when you're getting to the point of preparing to actually take the real SAT, we do subsidize a discount for the company Kaplan, which runs online prep classes for the SATs. It's by no means the only way to prepare, though. So heading into junior year, we don't automatically sign juniors up for the PSAT, but we do offer it to them. And a mailing or posts do go home in the fall of junior year to encourage juniors to also sign up for it. It is offered, the PSAT is the same time as the sophomore PSAT. Junior year, there is also, it's very rare, however, if your student has among the highest test scores in Massachusetts, they can qualify to become what's called a National Merit Scholar. I do, actually this year I have 2 students that qualified for that, but I've been a counselor for almost 20 years, and over all the years I've been a counselor, I've probably had less than 5 students. Unfortunately, just because in Massachusetts, we have some of the highest scores in the country, and so even if you get perfect scores, most people don't qualify. But I'm just saying, in junior year, that is the time where if you have those perfect scores and have answered more questions correctly than most students in Massachusetts, they may qualify for that additional scholarship opportunity and recognition. During the spring junior year is when they would take the real SAT, and it's offered in March, May, or June. It is also offered in August, but we would encourage people to take it at least I do, encourage them to take it by June. And then students often like to take it a second time. They don't have to take it a second time, but if they do, they could take it a second time in August and then have all their scores before deciding in the fall whether to send scores, or there are opportunities also in the fall of senior year to retake the test as well. The other test that they could take during the junior year is the ACT, and there are a couple other slides about what the difference between the 2 tests are in a minute, but the colleges have no preference between the 2 tests. If you would like to send test scores, either type of test would be equally impressive to the college. So the real thing to do is just take whichever test is more comfortable for you. The other thing during junior year, although could happen this year too, if you are a sophomore that's in a AP class this year, AP exams are always in May at specific scheduled dates. And then senior year, just another thing to keep in mind is if English is not your child's first language, and particularly if they've been in the country, sometimes even for less than 7 or 8 years, colleges may require them to also share a score proving their proficiency in English. And there is a test called the TOEFL, which is used to be the only tests they'd take. Nowadays, the good news is many colleges also will accept Duolingo tests, which are much cheaper and easier to arrange. But that's something I feel like a broken record on the issue of just researching on individual college websites. Every college website under their admissions page does list in detail what tests they do or don't require. So including SATs and ACTs, and including whether they would require an English proficiency test, in which cases. All right, so this again just pointing out, like I said, almost no colleges require SATs and ACTs still at this point. Actually, there are some. What test blind means is they won't even look at test scores if you try to send them. So for example, the University of California schools are test blind, so they don't accept test scores. WPI doesn't accept test scores, and actually that was true even before COVID. So there are some schools that you can't even send scores if you wanted to. But most others are test optional, which means your application will not be harmed if you don't send scores, but if your scores are above average, you're proud of them, and you'd like to send them to that school, you can send them, and it will be at least a small part of their consideration. But every school that is test optional tends to have a detailed message on their website that describes what their test optional policy is. And then that website, fairtest.org, is the best place if you're just looking for a website to kind of summarize the latest on which schools are and are not test optional. That has always been and still is the place to get that up-to-date list. And if you, again, have a student who's a sophomore this year, the PSAT results did come out in the winter and are available. There was a flex block assembly where Mr. Adebato went through how to access and how to interpret the score reports, but if they missed that or they needed a refresher, they can certainly reach out to us and schedule an appointment. Okay. I think for the sake of where you're at in the process, don't worry, I'm not gonna read every word on this slide about the differences between the SAT and ACT. To be honest, actually, the ACT is in transition right now between the current version. It's going to be different next year than it is right now, so actually don't have all the latest details. What I can tell you is the SAT has a format where it's online, but it's also, they use what's called adaptive scoring. So during the first half of the test, all students have the same combination of easy, medium, and hard questions, and based on how they do on that first half of the test, then they either get an easier or a harder second version of the test. Second half of the test. If they get tracked into the easy version, even if they get all the questions right, their maximum score is still going to be kind of in the average range. Whereas if they get tracked into the harder version of the second half, then even if they get a bunch of questions wrong, their score is going to be higher. So it is critical on the way the current SAT is operating to be very slow and careful on that first half of the test. The ACT, which is currently still a paper test, is transitioning to also be digital next year, but they are not going to use that adaptive model, so they're still going to have every student has an equal number of easy, medium, and hard questions, and your score isn't determined by which ones you get right or wrong, just how many total questions you get right or wrong. So that's the most major difference at the moment. The other big difference used to be that ACT had a science section that was formally part of the score, whereas the SAT does not. However, my understanding is with the new ACT next year, the science section will no longer be a formal part of the score, so it makes it a little less different. They are still going to include an optional science section that students can participate in, but it's not going to be part of the total score. I'm sorry, I said I wasn't going to get too far into it. I got further into it than I intended to. But I would encourage you just to look at the individual websites for SAT or ACT if you did want to really get into all the details. But in general, cover similar material. What we would recommend is either students just forget they heard about the ACT and just focus on SAT, or you can try practice questions on both websites. Some students do just naturally score higher on ACT, just the way the questions are asked. And if that's the case for you, you should focus on the ACT and forget about the SAT. Because again, one is not considered more or less impressive than the other when it comes to college admissions. So whichever test you would get a higher score on is which one is going to be more impressive. Registration won't be until junior year, but it is directly on those websites, and we do meet with our juniors starting second semester when they have a study hall in their first group meeting with their counselor. We tell them about how to register for the SAT and ACT. I think I did mention before about the general timeline that we would recommend taking one of the tests by the end of junior year, but in terms of all the college application deadlines, the latest you could take your last test would be December or January of senior year. There are fee waivers available, so for most people, these tests are not free. The PSAT is free for sophomores, but moving forward, the other tests you do have to pay a registration fee to take. However, if your family income puts you in the range that would qualify you for free or reduced lunch, you are eligible for a fee waiver where you don't have to pay for the test at all. Right now, I know it's maybe confusing because lunch and breakfast, thank goodness, are free for all students. So you may not have filled out the application thinking, why do we need to? If you think you may qualify, I would highly recommend the cafeteria does have that application available. And if you qualify, not only would you qualify for these fee waivers, but also you would qualify for fee waivers on when you actually send college applications. Those also cost money. But if you have a fee waiver for the SAT or ACT, they will be free applications as well. Okay. Yeah. So apparently this is new. Students used to have to come ask us for the fee waiver codes, and actually Mr. Adebato would share the codes with the counselors so we could give them to the students. But he just let me know that they just late-breaking change. Now families go directly to the website to request the fee waiver. All right, and then switching over into a little bit out of the testing realm and just telling you more about what the Massachusetts Public University system requires. The minimum requirements actually are in line with what our high school graduation requirements are. So you really don't have to worry about meeting these, but it probably looks familiar with what Mrs. Smith showed. They require 4 years of English and math, which we also require. They do specifically require that students do make it through Algebra 2 as far as math by their senior year. And then they require, just like us, those 3 years of social studies and science. Lab-based science, all of our science courses are lab-based, so you don't need to worry about which are which. And they also, just like us, require 2 years of the same world language. And by the way, world language, if the student is an English learner, that counts as their world language. So they don't have to worry about doing that plus another, a third language. If they already are fluent in one language and they're currently formally learning English, that is their world language. However, so those are just the minimums, but more competitive colleges, even including some of the state universities in Massachusetts, like UMass Amherst, which are more competitive, do expect more than just the minimum. So the way to have the strongest transcript possible is to not take only those 2 or 3 years of those subjects, but to take those 5 core subjects every year. That is especially what the most competitive colleges prefer to see. That's more impressive to them than doubling up in math and science or taking a bunch of extra electives. The kind of core liberal arts transcript is what they're looking for. When it comes to math, the more competitive colleges do prefer to see that a student has made it to pre-calculus. It's not an absolute requirement in most cases, but it is a preference. And they do prefer not just 2 years of a language, but 3 or 4. So if, again, I feel like I keep calling out the sophomores in particular, but I'm mentioning sophomores in this case, especially because for most sophomores now, they took a language last year and they're taking it this year. So officially, they can stop next year. What I recommend to my students is if you're still doing well in the language this year, and if your teacher recommends that you would continue doing well next year, I would highly recommend at least continuing into junior year. However, if this year really has been a struggle and you haven't been doing well, or it's been miserable to take, then taking it in junior year but getting a D in the class is not going to help you for college. So it is really case by case, but in general, it's a great idea to continue if you're still doing well. The advanced courses, like other counselors mentioned too, it's not a competition to have a certain number of honors or AP courses, but it is really to take honors or AP courses in those subjects that you are passionate about and doing well in. Because again, taking an advanced course but getting a grade that's less than an A or a B is not going to be helpful. But finding that right balance of, taking on extra challenge in subjects that you're doing well in, it is helpful to show that progression over time. And as far as individual requirements, if you do have particular colleges that you know your child is interested in the future, look at their admission websites, because they will sometimes have lists on there that will say, this is the number of years of language that we prefer. Or they might say, we strongly encourage or require that you take an art or music class. Or they may have a particular science or math requirement if you're planning on a particular major. So that is another case where it's important to look at individual college websites for more specific requirements. And then this is more of a niche thing, but it's still important to bring up. If your child is a very successful athlete in the high school varsity sports or club sports, and their coach has been saying, they may be talented enough to be recruited by a Division I or II college or university. For Division I or II sports, they are required to apply through the organization called the NCAA. And the NCAA does encourage them, starting junior year, to go on to, not junior year, sophomore year, to go onto the website and create a profile. Once they create a profile, they'll also be able to double check what courses that they're currently taking will be accepted by the NCAA. Really, by the time they get through the end of junior year, the NCAA will ask them to send a copy of their high school transcript just to verify that they're a decent student as well as being a strong athlete. So they have they calculate their GPA a little differently than we do. They only include core classes and don't include most electives. They also don't calculate GPA as far as a B+ or B-. It's just any level of a B is a B and it's a 3.0. But I do encourage you, again, if coaches are telling you that Division I or II colleges may be in your future, to begin checking that out now. However, anything other than those, you don't have to worry about it. Division III or club athletics, you don't have to apply with the NCAA. Okay. And so this is, I guess, a bit more of a recap of many of the things we talked about throughout the presentation. Just at this time, what are things to be focusing on? Especially since we're in the middle of the course selection process, make sure that you are, I say you, I guess mainly meaning the students themselves, having conversations, especially with their teachers, for recommendations about what levels they're most likely to be successful in, or even about what is a course sequence. If their goal is to make it to a particular science or math class or computer science class by senior year, what those teachers or department directors would recommend taking each year. Also, when we meet with them one-on-one, then we will give more the overall advice. Like I try to usually ask my students, not only just focused on each individual class and what their grades are, but what's their overall life balance feeling like this year? You know, so if they're in all honors classes, but they've been extremely overwhelmed and don't have enough time to sleep, then moving up into other higher levels next year would not be a good idea. However, if they're in classes this year where they're bored and they're too easy and they're really looking for more of a challenge, that's a different story, for example. Then we talked about reviewing those PSAT results, getting into the SCORE and UScience websites if you would like to begin researching colleges. For the sophomores, I just wanted to add a little bit more about UScience, that when we are having the groups with them, what we're doing is making sure everyone is at least able to create their account and knows how to start the tests, but we aren't able to have them complete all the tests with us, because like Mrs. Smith mentioned, they do take over an hour and each period is only an hour. So we get them going, but it is important that they finish those tests at home. So in my one-on-one meetings, I've been reminding my sophomores to please not forget to complete them, and then I encourage them when they do get their results, reach out to me. I would love to have a meeting with them and review their results and help them see how to navigate all that information about careers. During the summertime, it really is okay just to have some downtime and have fun as well, but it's a time, if it's difficult during the school year to get as involved in activities, summer can be a time to also do some kind of a long-term volunteer experience, especially when you're younger, and then when you're old enough to get a job, it's a better time to have a job maybe than during the school year when you're trying to balance classes. On those links that were on some of the early slides too, there are a lot of colleges in the area that do also run summer pre-college programs where students can sometimes take some courses designed for students who are still in high school, just to get exposed to some careers and major areas earlier. And like Mrs. Smith, or no, it was Mrs. Murphy, mentioned as well about the activities that they're involved in. You know, 9th grade is the time to just try out a bunch of things, but I'd say once you figure out what are those things that you really are committed to and want to stay involved in, hopefully look for opportunities heading into sophomore and junior year. If they're saying, hey, we need someone to serve as treasurer this year, or class representative, it is a great idea to take on some of those roles as you move through your years in high school. And then these last but not least, a little bit about stress and anxiety during high school. It is extremely normal. It would be uncommon to have no stress whatsoever. Actually, if you have no stress at all, there's a graph we don't have a picture of in this particular presentation, but there's something they call the Yerkes-Dodds law, I believe, something like that, where it's a bell curve that if you're on this end of the spectrum with no stress at all, you're just asleep. You know, you're bored, and that's not going to bring you to your optimal mode. If you have a little bit of stress, that's actually where you're going to perform better. However, if you go over that line and it's too much stress, it's the opposite, and that's not what you want, where you burn out and you're unable to function. So ideally, we want people operating in that mode where they're challenged and they're learning and they're trying new things and making mistakes, but at the same time not so overwhelmed that they can't manage. And so if you do get to that point where you're worried that, I am beginning to feel overwhelmed and I don't want to get burned out, we do have quite a few resources in the school and the district. First person you can always come to, of course, is any of your individual school counselor. Our training is in Masters in Psychology, so we are a great starting point. However, and often we can help students with exercises to practice stress management in a couple meetings to try techniques where they might reduce their anxiety and not even need to see anyone beyond that. However, if they may need to see someone more frequently or for a longer term basis, we do have resources besides our school adjustment counselors. We have connections to some outside agencies in town. Burlington Youth and Family Services has a real partnership with the school where you can frequently get an appointment with a therapist there much faster than you would with other individual therapists. Same with Leahy Clinic or Family Counseling Associates. Advocates is a hotline that our town pays for that not only students, but people of any age who are residents actually have access to call. And when you call that hotline 24/7, actually, I'm mixing it up. Advocates, what I'm talking about is called Interface. Interface is not, above on the slide, free service, yes. The hotline that you call, you just describe what type of therapist you're looking for, what type of insurance you have, and then instead of you having to go through a long list and call a bunch of therapist offices, someone from the hotline makes all those calls for you, and then they get back to you in about a week and say, here are 2 or 3 options of people that meet what you're looking for and who are taking new clients. Advocates is actually for an emergency hotline. So anytime you are really concerned about your child's safety, I would not recommend waiting to see us or sending an email, but instead call that advocates hotline. It's also better than just going to an emergency room. They will help you decide what is the level of support that you need, and it may not be an emergency room, but they'll help connect you to resources as well. And then in the school this year, we have a new program called Collaborative Care, where you see the red next to it. That is where it's actually outside therapists, but who now have an office in the school, right in the counseling department. So if the idea of having to arrange an appointment and go to it outside of school is challenging, they will meet with students during the school day, or also they have extended hours so they can meet before and after school as well. And it's called collaborative because they also help coordinate with doctors or with keeping an eye on how their grades are going in school. So that's a new opportunity this year. Any questions about my portion of the presentation before I hand it back to Mr. Adebato? Mm-hmm. Yes. So the question was if the SAT is digital here at the school. And I guess to make the answer a little more complicated, the SAT right now, the only choice is digital. There's no paper version of it anymore. The PSAT that everyone takes at the school automatically has also been digital for the last couple years, so it is preparing them for that version. But actually, when you sign up for the SAT, Burlington is one of the places you can sign up to take it. However, you don't automatically take it in Burlington. When you sign up for an SAT or ACT, you select the date you want to take it, and then the website will show you what schools have spots available. So people from other places also sign up for some of those spots in Burlington. So many of our students, when they sign up early, they take it in Burlington, but sometimes if they didn't sign up quite as early and the spots are full, they might take it in another local community as well. Yeah, does that answer what you were asking? Okay. Yeah. Oh, yes. So SAT is not during the school day. PSAT is. We do that during the school day in October, but the SAT is on Saturdays. It's specific Saturdays, so if you go to the College Board website, they do list, although this wouldn't pertain to right now, unless you may also have a child who is a junior or senior, but they list the Saturdays that it's available. It's actually on the same date across the country, but at various locations. Mm-hmm. Yeah, so it is true that there are a lot more opportunities, especially for jobs, but even some of the other programs when you become older, like age 16 is a key age, or honestly, even when it comes to internships, many internships are more designed for students in college than they are for high school. However, the opportunities, we do just post everything we hear about. I think that as far as jobs go, places that hire students before they're 16, supermarkets tend to hire students. I had friends when I was in high school who volunteered or worked in the town library when they were 14. It really just depends, but actually too, the science department maintains a separate page of opportunities. I believe the teachers share it with all the students, so they may also highlight. I don't have too many specific opportunities to mention off the top of my head, but I do think many of the opportunities when you're younger, 14 and 15, are more likely to be volunteer as opposed to paid opportunities or formal internships. Yeah. Anything else? All right, so I'll pass it back to Mr. Atabata.
Thank you. So as we wrap up, I just wanted to go over a few final things. Next week on Wednesday, Burlington High School co-sponsors a college fair with some of the other Middlesex League schools. I really encourage you to consider taking your child to this. It's a good experience, a college fair. I think that sometimes students will bring a list of a couple of colleges they're interested in, but just to get that experience, I think if you don't bring a list, that's okay. You can walk around, check out the different colleges, talk to a few reps. I think it's a good experience to go through that. This is offered every year. We do this, again, with some other Middlesex League schools. We'll be posting some information about this on Parent Square, and we'll provide some helpful tips for parents and students when they attend a college fair. We'll have a financial aid night in June. We have a representative that comes in from MIFA, the Massachusetts Educational Financial Authority. MIFA is a nonprofit agency that does a lot of outreach to high schools throughout the state. We do a lot of work with them. They're a great resource. Their website has lots of different information. They have webinars that you can attend. They have pre-recorded webinars as well if you were interested in looking a little bit more into that. But otherwise, know that June 5th right here in the auditorium, we'll have that event. And then fast forwarding to next year, we will have an event for junior college planning. Junior college planning really does kick in right around spring, right around now of junior year, so spring of junior year. Some other upcoming events, there's a performing arts fair that's at the Chelmsford Center for the Arts. If students are interested in the arts, we encourage you to attend that. NACAC is the National Association of College Admissions Counselors. They have a very informative website with all sorts of information and resources, but there's a big college fair in Boston on March 27th. In that you actually do have to register for. So you would go to that website, and it's in Boston. If you're interested, check that out. And then the Peterson School in Woburn, it's a trade school that has a variety of trades, electrical, plumbing, HVAC. They actually have an open house on March 27th, which is a Saturday. Again, that would be an opportunity for a student that is interested in that area. They could feel free to attend that. Next slide. A couple of things. Again, you grab that information in the back. We would ask you to fill out the evaluation form. There is a QR code if you want to do it online, but there's also a hard copy form, and we'd love for you to fill that out for us. Leave us feedback. We'd love to get some constructive criticism. And then score. You've heard a lot about our SCORE program. Any students at Burlington High School have access to it using their school Gmail account. Parents, if you'd like access to it, you just need to fill out the SCORE sign-up sheet. You'll probably get an email either tomorrow or very early next week with access information. You do have the same access and ability to view things as your son or daughter, and you could certainly explore yourself. You could make recommendations of colleges to your child, and you could take a look at the career piece as well. So that wraps up the formal part of the presentation. We'd be more than happy to answer any questions you have. I'll stick around after if you wanted to ask something you didn't want to ask on BCAT. But does anyone have any general questions? Question is, what is Adopt a Class? Adopt a Class is a scholarship program in town that students volunteer at Adopt a Class sponsored events, and they are keeping track of hours. So the Adopt a Class folks that monitor these different events track the hours. And every class, K through 12 at Burlington High School, has a business representing that particular class. And so the idea is in kindergarten, that business is working with this particular class, and they're working with them all the way through 12th grade, raising money every year. So by the time those students get to grade 12 and they've contributed hours, fast forward to senior year, student will fill out an application, list the hours that they've participated, and they could get a scholarship based on the number of hours. And again, they've worked, you heard Mrs. Murphy say, for students that are new to Burlington, they still have access to be part of that program. They have to try to accumulate about 16 hours. And there's a variety of events you've probably heard of over the years that are Adopt a Class sponsored events. There's a carnival. I forget what school has the carnival. There's a pumpkin fair. There's several things throughout the year. Any other questions? Yes. We have not heard anything. We have not heard anything. But on that note, community college is free. If you didn't know, community college is now free. We just talked to a senior that got a scholarship, and he came in to say, I don't have to pay at Middlesex. And so we talked about another way to work how that scholarship could be paid out through whether it's books or computer device, you know. But on the good note, the community college is free. But we haven't heard anything at this point. I saw someone raise a hand over here. Oh, which one was that for? For the Peterson School? I can double check that. Okay, we can double check that. Sorry about that. Any other questions? All right, great. Well, thank you all for coming. Like I said, we'll stick around for any individual questions you may have, but otherwise, thanks again. Have a great night.